The sun stood high over a young world, a world of pristine dawns and silent dusks. Beneath a vast sky untainted by the slightest wisp of pollution, the two sons of Adam and Eve were building their lives. They were Cain and Abel, the first to be born outside the Garden of Eden, for whom the memory of a perfect place was but the whispered tales of their parents in the night. Cain was the elder, a man with broad shoulders and a brow weathered by sun and wind. His hands, calloused and rough, were a testament to long hours of toil in the fields. He was a farmer, a conqueror of the land. Under his hand, barren seeds sprouted and arid plots of earth became fertile. He grew rice, the heavy panicles bending in the wind, promising a bountiful harvest. He cultivated orchards where apples and pomegranates grew plump and glossy. Under the sunny, his beds of green vegetables were lush and vibrant, the result of sweat and perseverance. Cain loved his land, but it was a love tinged with possession and pride. Whenever he looked upon the fruits of his labor, he did not see the grace of the Creator who gave life to the soil, but only the strength of his own hands. He spoke to the earth, to the plants, but his words were commands, urging them to grow and bear fruit according to his will. Within Cain there was an urge to prove himself, to create things great and grand that everyone, including God, would have to acknowledge. His diligence was a relentless race against himself and the world. In a nearby valley where the hills sloped gently and the grass grew thick, Abel lived a completely different life. He was a shepherd. Abel's frame was not as sturdy as his brother's, but his eyes were clear and gentle, reflecting the peace of the meadows. His work was not to subdue, but to nurture. He did not command his flock, but led them with the sweet sound of his flute and the softness of his voice. Abel cherished every creature in his flock. He loved the feeling of caring for newborn lambs, their fleece as soft as silk, and their faint bleats melting his heart. He bandaged the injured, searched for the lost, and protected them from the dangers that lurked in the night. Under Abel's care, the flock grew healthy and strong. Before long, he had a large flock, a valuable possession. But to Abel, they were more than just property. They were his companions, living proof of God's providence and mercy. Every morning, watching his sheep graze on the hillside, Abel's heart filled with a deep sense of gratitude. He saw God in every blade of grass, every drop of dew, and in the trusting eyes of his sheep. The two brothers lived near each other, yet it was as if they were in two different worlds. Cain often looked at Abel with a certain disdain. He considered his younger brother's work too easy, merely wandering about with his animals. "You just follow them," Cain once said, his voice laced with scorn, "while I have to pour out my sweat to plow and till just to have something to eat." Abel only smiled gently. "To each his own work, brother. I care for them, and the Lord blesses them to grow. You plant, and He also makes your seeds sprout." Abel's reply only irritated Cain further. He disliked the way his brother always mentioned the Lord in everything. To Cain, success was the result of his own effort, while failure was due to harsh land or unfavorable weather. He rarely thought of the one who created it all. The love Abel had for his brother was sincere, but Cain did not reciprocate. Deep down, he harbored a simmering jealousy for the serenity and joy that always seemed to be present on Abel's face. Then one day the thought of presenting a gift, an offering of thanks to God, arose in the hearts of the two brothers. It was a way to express their gratitude to the one who had given them life and everything they had. Cain decided he would offer the best produce from his fields. He went through his land, selecting the largest heads of grain, the juiciest clusters of fruit, and the freshest bundles of vegetables. But as he gathered them, his mind was not filled with gratitude. Instead, he was calculating. He wanted his gift to be grand, impressive. He wanted God to see how hard he had worked, what wonderful results he had produced. His gift was a display, an assertion of his own worth. He built an altar of stone and carefully arranged the produce upon it, creating a beautiful and proud picture. Meanwhile, Abel also contemplated his gift. He wanted to offer to the Lord the most precious thing he had, not to show off, but to express his sincere love and reverence. He walked into the midst of his flock, his heart heavy. He looked at each one, and finally his eyes rested on a firstborn lamb, the best and healthiest in the entire flock. It was the lamb he had delivered with his own hands, the one he had cared for since it was a weak little thing. To give it up was a great sacrifice. But Abel knew that a gift is only truly valuable when it comes from sacrifice and a loving heart. With a silent prayer, Abel gently separated the lamb from the flock. He also built an altar simpler than Cain's, just a few stones piled on top of each other. He offered the lamb as a burnt offering, an act symbolizing complete devotion. As the fire blazed, a fragrant smoke ascended straight to the heavens like an accepted prayer. And then the difference became clear. An unusual sense of peace and warmth enveloped Abel and his altar. It seemed as though a gentle light shone down from heaven, a silent confirmation that the Lord was pleased with Abel and his gift. 1. He saw not only the fat lamb, but also the humble heart, the faith and the love of the giver. Abel's gift was accepted because Abel was a good man who loved the Lord and his brother. But at Cain's altar nothing happened. The produce lay there vibrant and beautiful, but cold and lifeless. There was no sign of approval. God was not pleased with Cain and his offering. 1. It was not because fruits and vegetables were less valuable than a lamb. The problem lay in the heart. He saw through the pride, the calculation, and the lack of sincere love in Cain. His gift was but an empty shell. Cain's face fell. Disappointment quickly turned into a terrible rage. Why? Why was Abel's gift accepted and not his? Had he not worked harder? Were his results not greater and more beautiful? The jealousy that had been a smoldering ember now burst into a raging fire in his heart. He looked over at Abel, who was kneeling with a grateful expression, and a bitter hatred, like gall, rose within him. God, who sees into every heart, saw the darkness enveloping Cain's soul. He spoke to him not in a voice of rebuke, but as a loving warning. Why are you angry? Why has your face fallen? If you do what is right, will you not be accepted? But if you do not do what is right, sin is crouching at your door. It desires to have you, but you must rule over it. 1. It was a chance, a call for Cain to conquer the demon in his heart. God wanted him to change his ways, to realize his mistake, and return to humility and love. But Cain did not listen. The Lord's warning was like adding fuel to the fire. His wounded pride would not allow him to admit he was wrong. He felt that God had treated him unjustly. He did not want to change. He only wanted the recognition he thought he deserved. His anger now had a specific target: Abel. In Cain's eyes, Abel was the cause of it all. It was Abel's perfection that made him look bad. It was the acceptance Abel received that highlighted the rejection he had to bear. A dark thought, a thought that had never before existed in the world, began to sprout in his mind. The next day, Cain approached Abel, his face feigning normality, concealing the storm within him. He said, "Abel, let's go out to the field." 1. Abel, with his pure and unsuspecting heart, readily agreed. He had always hoped for a chance to be alone with his brother, to talk, to share. He hoped to comfort Cain after what had happened the day before. The two brothers walked together through Cain's fields of golden wheat, further out to a desolate place where there was only them and the sky. When they reached a secluded spot with no one around, Cain stopped. His expression changed. The mask of calm fell away, revealing a face twisted with anger and hatred. Abel was startled by the sudden change. "Brother Cain, what is it?" he asked with concern. "What is it?" Cain roared, his voice hoarse. "You always have to be so good. It's always the Lord this, the Lord that. You think you're better than me. You think God loves you more than me." "That's not it, Brother Abel," tried to explain, his voice trembling. "I love you. I just want us to love God together." But Abel's words could not penetrate the wall of hatred that had been built so strong. Cain could no longer hear anything. The sin that God had warned about, the beast crouching at the door, had now pounced on him. It had taken complete control. In a blind rage, Cain lunged at Abel. Abel was too surprised to react. Cain used all the strength of a farmer accustomed to hard labor and struck his brother. He struck him down and killed him. A dry thud echoed, and Abel fell to the ground. Rich red blood, the first human blood to be shed unjustly, began to spread across the dry earth. The light in Abel's eyes faded. He drew his last breath on the very land his brother had cultivated. Cain had done a terrible thing. Silence fell over the field. Cain's anger subsided, replaced by a feeling of emptiness and horror. He looked down at his brother's still body, at the pool of blood seeping into the soil. What had he done? For the first time in human history, a brother had killed his brother. The first crime had been marked upon the earth. Even though Abel was dead, God still remembered him. Abel was a good man, and the Lord never forgets someone like that. Abel's blood cried out to him from the ground, and he knew that in the future he would bring Abel back to life. At that time, Abel would never have to die again. He would be able to live forever on a restored earth where there would be no more violence and hatred. It will surely be a great pleasure to meet people with hearts like Abel's, but God is not pleased with people like Cain. After the criminal act, he called to Cain and asked, "Where is your brother Abel?" Cain, in his fear and stubbornness, answered insolently, "I do not know." Am I my brother's keeper? 1. But nothing can be hidden from the Creator. God said, "Your brother's blood cries out to me from the ground." And then he pronounced Cain's sentence. He would be cursed. The ground would no longer yield its crops for him, and he would be a restless wanderer on the earth. He was banished far from his family, far from the land he knew. When Cain left carrying the burden of his sin and God's punishment, he took one of his sisters with him, and she became his wife. They went to the east to a foreign land. There Cain and his wife began to have children. The other sons and daughters of Adam and Eve also married each other and brought forth new generations. Before long, the earth was populated with many people. But the story of the first two brothers, one loved by God and one destroyed by jealousy, will forever be a profound lesson, a warning echoing through the ages about the battle between good and evil within every human heart.